Beijing has summoned the German ambassador to China after the foreign minister Annalena Baerbock called President Xi Jinping a dictator. In this, the latest flare-up of tensions between the two countries. Beijing and Berlin ties are more and more strained as the German government takes a tougher stance on issues such as human rights and Taiwan. This comes as China sent warplanes into the airspace around Taiwan this weekend. Meanwhile, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Moscow for what's been described as security talks. Vladimir Putin, of course, still seeking outright Chinese backing for his war on Ukraine. Let's get the broader analysis and bring in Zongyuan Zoe Liu, who is a fellow for international political economy at the Council on Foreign Relations. Zoe is also author of the book Sovereign Funds: How the Communist Party of China Finances Its Global Ambitions. Zoe, thank you so much for being with us. Taiwan, an issue that is clearly placing Beijing in a tight spot right now.
Yes, thank you, Mark, for having me. You're absolutely right. Taiwan is a hotspot issue for China and for China's relationship with the United States. And in the current situation, especially following Wang Yi's meeting with Jake Sullivan, both sides, although both sides emphasized that this is a candid, constructive meeting, China did emphasize that Taiwan is the absolute red line that the United States or any other country cannot surpass. So from that perspective, this military exercise is an attempt of Beijing to sort of internalize Taiwan Strait as part of mainland Taiwan strategy. And then at the same time, we also need to keep this in mind that Beijing has also been offering carrots last week, which is to offer a new coherent development plan between Fujian province, that is just across the street from Taiwan, and even allowing Taiwan younger generation to use a very similar national ID card, the same as mainland people. So the broad stroke is that Beijing has been offering both carrots and sticks and is kind of consistent with Beijing's Taiwan strategy.
And this is incredibly clear the way you express it, Zoe, as always. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of people who would be in Taiwan looking up at the sky and seeing so many warplanes from the mainland circling around the island. And I'm wondering, what is China actually trying to achieve through this military harassment, which is how many people see it?
Right. Taiwan's defense ministry people definitely used the word harassment. But, there are two ways that I interpret it. One is the timing. It happened over the weekend when Jake Sullivan was meeting with Wang Yi, and Chinese foreign ministry also emphasized the issue of Taiwan being raised and being discussed during the meeting. And at the same time, Taiwan also has an election coming. The pro-independent DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, perhaps if the independence presidential candidate get elected, that is going to further raise the tension. So from that perspective, I think this increased frequency of the mainland to conduct military exercise, flying warplanes, is a part of a warning.
And at this time, we're speaking about Taiwan, but the other side of the coin, perhaps in many ways, is what's happening between Beijing and Moscow, with Wang Yi, the foreign secretary there of China, currently in Russia for what have been described as strategic security consultations. What does that actually mean? Because behind that, people might be suspecting that this is China getting involved deeply in what's happening in Ukraine. Can you clarify what you think is going on?
Right. So, Mark, you're right. This is this so-called strategic security consultation meeting between China and Moscow. And this is not the first one. This is the 18th of this kind of meeting. So in any other year, this kind of meeting perhaps would not have been picked up by media. However, this time is interesting and different in the sense that, first of all, it happens again after Russia's war against Ukraine, while the West has been saying that this is Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and so far China has not declared that as an invasion. And then secondly, there is a possibility of President Putin visit China for the Belt and Road Forum, which would be the third one. If he goes, that would be the third one that he visit. And this is actually very important because, first of all, this is going to be his first in-person visit to Beijing after the Olympic. It would also be the very first trip that he made to Beijing after the ICC, International Criminal Court, issued a warrant against Putin. While China is not a member of the ICC, it put this in a very delicate situation.
Indeed, very delicate, because effectively this is China aligning itself with someone who's a wanted war criminal. This is the issue, isn't it? And it's worth pointing out the US is saying that China has been aiding Russia both economically and supplying key technology since Putin decided to invade Ukraine. So China, as you say, in a very delicate situation.
Absolutely. While from the U.S. perspective, China's lack of condemnation, as well as China's continuing buying Russian energy, has become a view from a U.S. perspective that is China's support to Russia. While the Chinese government as well as Chinese spokespeople have declined to comment on China's support and even denied China's support. So far, there is no material evidence suggesting that China has been helping Russia to bypass Western sanctions. But if you look at the Chinese banks' asset, actually not just the Russians increase its renminbi in its foreign exchange reserves, but the Chinese investment as well as Chinese banks' holding of Russian assets actually increased.
Zongyuan Zoe Liu of the Council on Foreign Relations, thank you as ever for joining us here on France 24. We appreciate your time as always and your very frank analysis of the situation. Zoe, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mark, for having me.
You're very welcome. We'll watch, of course, for all developments on the situation here at France 24. And that was Zongyuan Zoe Liu of the Council on Foreign Relations.